climbing through 20,000 feet above Tehran at 0547 local time. An Israeli F-16 designated Iron sliced toward a Revolutionary Guard command post. Accompanying this lead aircraft was a formidable force. More than 90 Israeli F-35 Adirs, F-16 Baraks, and F-15 Rams, converging on the city with intentions of transforming it into a sprawling parking facility for Iran's inaugural ballistic missiles. The pilot's targeting pod locked onto a pristine infrared signature emanating from the structure beneath him. Every condition aligned perfectly for what appeared destined to become a textbook precision assault. That's precisely when everything changed. His radar warning receiver shrieked to life. Phased array engagement, 8 kilometers distance. Fire control acquisition complete in under 3 seconds. He possessed roughly the duration of a single breath to determine whether he'd survive the subsequent 10 seconds. Muscle memory took over immediately. Hard right brake, flares deployed, pure instinct. The sort of reaction a pilot executes the same way you recoil when something hurtles toward your face. Against a radar-guided Tor M1, flares prove about as effective as a screen door submarine. What kept him breathing was the violent maneuver itself. 7 Gs of desperate physics repositioned his aspect angle faster than the Tor's guidance system could compensate. The missile streaked harmlessly past. Dangerously close. Closer than having death himself simply ring your doorbell and flee. Iron lead remained airborne. Heading was wrong. Altitude was wrong. 8 JDAMs remained loaded, and his targets vanished somewhere in the murk behind him. Survival was sufficient for now. Yet here emerged the Tor M1's lethal advantage. Destruction confirmation had arrived 2 days prior via satellite imagery. It was erased from the target roster, dismissed, forgotten. What reconnaissance couldn't capture was an alternative crew driving to the destroyed wreckage, positioning their launcher in the confirmed impact crater, and waiting. The Iranians had discovered a tactic the coalition overlooked entirely. They were treating battle damage assessments like Yelp reviews. 1 star, no second visit. Ingenious. It functioned for exactly 90 seconds. An Adir transiting above the Narmak sector detected the Tor M1's radar pulses through its ASQ-239 electronic warfare system, the way a bat perceives echoes bouncing through darkness, and silenced the battery. 90 seconds from initial detection to complete shutdown. However, those 90 seconds served a purpose beyond shooting. The Tor crew transmitted bearing, altitude, trajectory. The entire Barak formation's approach vector got broadcast across an IRGC frequency piggybacked on the civilian cellular network. A network the coalition hadn't targeted because demolishing a nation's phone infrastructure hardly wins hearts and minds. The Tor crew vanished. Their information had already propagated throughout the city. 12 kilometers westward, an Adir descending over Sattar Khan district focused on the IRGC Cooperative Foundation headquarters, the financial engine bankrolling Iran's Middle Eastern operations. Concrete buildings sandwiched the target structure like goalposts, bookending the aim point. Single entry vector. The pilot threaded it flawlessly. A spice bomb penetrated the 4th floor. The organization funding rockets now accepted contributions through rubble. Eastward, IRGC weapons personnel at Parchin released ordnance between incoming Tomahawk impacts, dropping munitions through the gaps like participants in the world's deadliest Frogger match. Southeast of the capital, a Bavar 373 commander had been emitting his Mirage 4 ESA radar in quick 2-second bursts, intervals sufficient for reconnaissance, insufficient for detection. Then the Tor crew's parting transmission provided him azimuth and elevation. He pivoted the Mirage 4 toward that bearing and transitioned to continuous fire control tracking. Conceptualize the Bavar 373 as Iran's indigenous equivalent to the Russian S-300. Syad-4 missiles boasting 125-mile range, manufactured domestically despite sanctions. Whether that signifies ingenuity or menace depends entirely on your assessment of Iranian manufacturing standards. Indisputably, every Barak and Ram occupying that bearing now found themselves squarely within the engagement envelope. Stealth-capable Adirs could withstand it. The Bavar's radar couldn't maintain stealth lock. Baraks hauling dozens of external ordnance, whose radar signatures resembled barn doors versus marbles, presented fundamentally different challenges. The identical Adir pilot who had recently neutralized the Tor-M registered the Bavar activating on his instrumentation, retasking number 2 in 120 seconds. He banked south and dispatched a weapon downrange. 2 decades later, the Mirage 4 went permanently dark. 2 surface-to-air missile engagements within 3 minutes. 0 assigned ground targets eliminated. The IRGC Intelligence Directorate in Nemark, coordinating Iranian security across 4 eastern sectors, remained upright, operational, untouched. And no Adir was overhead in Nemark's airspace for the first occasion that morning. Below the SAM engagement, Baraks descended into 4 days of inferno and smoke that transformed the metropolis into what resembled hell's entrance. Granite Flight, representing the second Barak quartet, dropped below 18,000 feet while watching the forward-looking infrared imagery degrade into mush. At 15,000 feet, deterioration accelerated. At 12,000 feet, Granite Lead possessed half his ordnance as Spice precision munitions. Spice utilizes scene-matching technology comparable to facial recognition for structures. Pre-programmed imagery gets compared against real-time seeker displays, delivering accuracy surpassing 3 meters. Across 4 accumulated days of haze, the seeker perceived something resembling a filthy aquarium interior. Scene match registered failure. GPS contingency carried 10-meter circular error probability, though that margin proved insufficient at this altitude. The regime doesn't operate from secluded military installations. Their command nodes share structural walls with residential complexes. Load-bearing concrete literally separates families from operational centers. Sub-meter targeting threads the warhead through the precise window. 10-meter delivery puts it somewhere in that neighborhood, hoping for luck. They cannot implement that approach. Hermes 900 reconnaissance drones hovering beneath the smoke layer provided the only sensors maintaining ground visibility, relaying real-time infrared imagery to every pilot in the formation. Stripped of Hermes connectivity, Baraks would discharge ordnance onto GPS coordinates they couldn't confirm into residential zones, where a 10-meter deviation meant attacking the incorrect building. Concurrently, 22 kilometers westbound, an Iranian Yak-130, fitted with R-73E infrared missiles, was converging on one of these reconnaissance platforms, with a solid rear cockpit lock. The Hermes possessed neither countermeasures nor velocity. A conspicuous infrared signature executing leisurely orbits at 8,000 feet, the aerial equivalent of a 3-legged competitor entering the Kentucky Derby. Every other package sensor, targeting pods, AESA radars, satellite intelligence, penetrated the darkness, but couldn't penetrate particulate-laden smoke. Infrared scatters against carbon particles identically to how vehicle headlights scatter through fog. The Hermes orbiting beneath the smoke deck at 8,000 feet represented the singular asset delivering real-time ground photography. Its destruction meant every pilot operations south of Iran became blind. The Adir, redirecting back toward Nemark following the Bavar engagement, spotted the Yak 130 on EOTS camera closing on the Hermes seconds away from launch. He accelerated downward toward the contact, yet in the airspace gap he'd abandoned above Nemark, the same gap 2 SAM engagements had forced wide, a garage entrance lifted, and something rolling out fundamentally altered the engagement calculus. The Hermes registered it initially. A substantial vehicle compressed into a narrow Nemark thoroughfare. Missile positioned vertically upon its launcher. 4 individuals at ground level connecting fuel umbilicals with the unhurried professionalism of personnel who'd executed this procedure countless times beneath fire. Ghadar 110, Iran's maximum-range ballistic missile, capable of reaching anywhere throughout Israel without exertion. The Ghadar demands minimal preparation. Deploy, elevate, connect second-stage umbilical, ignite. Assuming this crew had rehearsed indoors and the composed, methodical movements broadcast across the infrared display suggested precisely that, this projectile could reach airborne status within 30 minutes. Targeting Tel Aviv, Haifa, or Ben Gurion Airport, where aircrew families sheltered in bunkers, listening to alarm sirens. None of this was permitted. The CAOC, Combined Air Operations Center, the command nexus orchestrating every formation aircraft from a fortified bunker hundreds of kilometers removed, reassigned Granite Lead, the closest Barak, the closest ordnance. The Basij command installation he'd been designated for, 6 kilometers northward, could defer or assign 2 alternative pilots. Presently, a ballistic missile vectored toward Israel superseded everything. Solo cockpit circumstances, without a dedicated weapons officer managing targeting during flight navigation. Right hand manipulating the stick, left hand inputting GPS coordinates into a GBU-31, originally configured for the Basij facility. Reprogramming a JDAM inside a single-seat cabin built for individual attention, while descending through lingering smoke, managing incoming warnings, and monitoring a tactical frequency where 90 fighters simultaneously transmitted, represents approximately the difficulty it sounds. Conceptualize modifying your GPS destination while executing a highway merge during a thunderstorm. Except your GPS is a 2,000-pound warhead, and your highway is contested airspace above a metropolitan area, genuinely motivated to immortalize your face across merchandise. 14 kilometers north, a Barak crossing the Pastoran sector captured a 3-second smoke opening. Mountain winds off the Alborz temporarily dispersed the haze sufficiently for the spice seeker to achieve matching. Ministry of Intelligence, 3rd elevation. The scene-matching algorithm recognized the structure's roofline configuration, achieved lock, and the ordnance-initiated glide before obscuration returned. Sub-meter accuracy through a fenestration that appeared on the seeker's display briefer than a sneeze duration. Orbiting above Lavizan, another Barak pilot remained over a confirmed IRGC logistics installation carrying 2 JDAMs, yet facing a complication. Ordnance couldn't resolve. Hermes transmission depicted personnel movement, non-combatants transiting the neighboring thoroughfare, 1 block distant from the designated impact zone. He maintained his orbit, fuel diminishing, engagement windows contracting with rotation. Authorization remained absent. The facility maintained position, continuing operations, while the pilot delegated to obliterate it, circled watching civilians pass, and anticipated an opening, potentially never arriving. Ranat's lead had 7 assigned aim points, now abandoned, sitting vacant on targeting matrices. Designated to a pilot occupied, reprogramming a 2,000-pound warhead onto a ballistic missile he'd recognized 180 seconds earlier. Command frantically redistributed the chaos. Pair of objectives transferred to a ROM formation already overburdened on consumption. Triple reassigned to barracks, operating adjacent sectors, compelled squeezing supplementary targets into already compressed attack profiles. Couple stayed unallocated. Cascading confusion was initiating. He successfully entered coordinates, banked onto an improvised attack vector, 15,000 feet altitude, shallow descent trajectory, velocity exceeding published procedure. GPS demanded warhead placement inside a narrow street width, residential buildings flanking both margins, the launcher wedged between them, directing the Qadir 110 skyward like the Middle East's most threatening flagpole. 2,000 pounds released from centerline pylon, tail assembly unfolded, 4 fins maneuvering through murk. The Qadir's solid propellant stage fractured on detonation. Fuel ignited. The Hermes transmission whited completely for 3 seconds. A conflagration converting the compressed street into an inferno. When imaging restored, crater materialized, wreckage burning. The projectile previously targeted toward Israel transformed into debris occupying an earthen cavity. 1 warhead expended, 7 JDAMs allocated, 0 replacements remaining. 4 minutes consumed reprogramming and repositioning, cost fuel he wouldn't replenish. His reserves transitioned from restricted to figures he preferred avoiding contemplation. 30,000 meters overhead, a Rome weapons officer was addressing this challenge. His APG-82 AESA radar, an actively electronically scanned apparatus constructing ground representations utilizing radar wavelengths rather than illumination, rendering smoke and atmospheric haze essentially transparent, functioning how sonar disregards murky conditions, mapped terrain through the pollution layer as if it weren't present. He cross-referenced this radar visualization against pre-stored target photographs, refined the coordinates, then distributed revised aim points downrange to the barracks via Link 16. The encrypted communications architecture permitting every fighter exchanging targeting particulars instantaneously, functioning like a group messaging application for aviators, except every notification represents GPS coordinates. Achieving sub-meter precision remained unachievable, though sufficient for discriminating between correct and incorrect city blocks. The twin-seat platform, executing targeting calculations for every individual pilot, incapable of personally confirming his objectives. Above the Levitsan Mountains, the Adir that had alternated between SAM engagements and ground operations all morning discharged a Python 5, Israel's premier infrared-guided aerial missile, competent engaging objectives from unrestricted angles and executing maneuvers rendering humans unconscious, between the Yak's power plants. The Hermes maintained its unaware orbit, completely oblivious to recent occurrences. The Adir pilot, commencing the daylight with a targeting roster and a full weapons complement, had neutralized dual SAM apparatus and an Iranian fighter in 360 seconds. Designated ground objectives, 0 destructions. Tracking this progression, he'd return possessing more air victories than a pest suppression technician encounters annual pest problems, and inferior mission success than a spouse sent shopping with enumerated requirements. Every reassignment constituted the appropriate determination. The Tor might have annihilated barracks. The Bavar risked the entire squadron. The Yak could have rendered the complete formation sightless. None of that modified his fuel calculations, or the objectives still glowing untouched on his monitor. He banked back toward the runway. The IRGC Intelligence Directorate remained standing, though not indefinitely. The sensor survived. The Barak retained its feed through the atmosphere, but iron-lead, maneuvering onto Tehran Pars for the successive attempt, would uncover the district's deadliest armaments existed not on radar emitters or launcher vehicles. They occupied rooftops. Iron-lead descended through Merk, approaching the Basij Regional Command in Tehran Pars, when EOTS registered something on a neighboring rooftop, transforming the subsequent 3 seconds into something profoundly personal. An individual standing, cylindrical instrument balanced on his shoulder, oriented toward the inbound Barak. Misag-3, Iran's adaptation of the Chinese QW-18. Infrared-directed, shoulder-launched, 5-kilometer operational distance, 4-kilometer altitude restriction, placing iron-lead precisely within engagement parameters. 0 electromagnetic emission. Initial notification arrives with rocket motor ignition. Comparable reaction interval to finding a wasp nesting inside your helmet, traveling at interstate velocity. The Basij transport these instruments like security personnel carry communication devices. Departure occurs without exception. 3 seconds separated JDAM ejection from motor ignition. His PID SUV detection apparatus, a missile warning methodology sensing ultraviolet emission from motor ignition, essentially supplying pilots a microsecond alert regarding lethal intent, registered the plume at 500 low. Iron-lead banked right, scattered flares, pulled with sufficient force blurring peripheral vision. Launch moment forfeit. The Misag-2's optical seeker represented no unsophisticated heat follower from television's music video era. Contemporary infrared seekers construct thermal representations, employing recognition algorithms your cellular device uses for facial identification. They don't pursue maximum heat. They distinguish aircraft configuration specifically. The projectile lifted almost perpendicularly off the fortification, rotated toward iron-lead's thermal signature, and compressed separation at supersonic velocity. Yet the drastic maneuver changed aspect geometry, exceeding the guidance processor's adjustment capacity. The warhead detonated adjacent a flare 50 meters posterior, sufficiently proximate to transmit through the fuselage, resembling a kick against the empennage. Iron-lead had exhausted 6 minutes.